Work and learn. Meet Light Meet Max. සක්‍රිය කර ගැනීමට MySLT app එකට log වෙන්න. Work and learn. Meet Light Meet Max. සක්‍රිය කර ගැනීමට MySLT app එකට log වෙන්න.
දසන කාන්ති චූර්ණය සහිත liver ආයුෂ් දන්තාලේපය දත්වල ඇති ප්‍රශ්න 10ක් වළකයි.
Tonight, interruptions. 3-hour power cuts starting from tomorrow as Norachole power plant unit breaks down. Revelation. PUCSL says CB can cover its cost by generating 500 billion rupees instead of the IMF proposal to allow CB to gain 850 billion rupees. Gift from the neighbor. Sri Lanka's first Dornier 228 maritime patrol aircraft gifted by India officially handed over to Sri Lanka. Bull Run. The Colombo bourse records market turnover of 5.8 billion rupees, continuing to trade in gains for 2.5 weeks straight. Default. Global ratings agency S&P Global slashes its rating on Sri Lanka bonds to default following missed interest and principal payments. All this and much more coming up tonight on First at 9. This Monday, the 15th of August 2022.
Vim Deara milliliter CA Smart Pack එක රුපියල් 85ට දැන් වෙළඳ පොලේ.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to AdaDerana 24's English News. I'm Andrew Bernard. Now, Sri Lanka's first Dornier 228 maritime patrol aircraft gifted by India was officially handed over to President Ranil Wickremesinghe by Indian High Commissioner Gopal Bagle. This aircraft was gifted as part of a request made by Sri Lanka to India in 2018 to obtain 2 Dornier aircrafts during the defence dialogue between the two countries. Speaking at the event, President Ranil Wickremesinghe called officials of both India and Sri Lanka to commit towards strengthening bilateral relations. The Sri Lankan Air Force today inducted the first ever Dornier 228 maritime patrol aircraft gifted by India to its fleet at a ceremonious procession. The aircraft was officially handed over to President Ranil Wickremesinghe by High Commissioner of India Gopal Bagle at the Sri Lanka Air Force Base in Katunayaka. The aircraft will be flown and maintained by a crew of 15 SLF personnel who were specifically trained in India for a period of 4 months. The aircraft was given to Sri Lanka after the government sought the possibility of obtaining 2 Dornier reconnaissance aircraft from India to enhance maritime surveillance capabilities of the country during the defence dialogue that took place between India and Sri Lanka in January 2018. As part of the request, India agreed to provide Sri Lanka with the Dornier 228 maritime patrol aircraft from the Indian Naval Fleet on gratis basis for 2 years until a brand new aircraft is built. The Indian government has expressed their willingness to provide Sri Lanka with the new Dornier reconnaissance aircraft after it is manufactured. Subsequently, another new Dornier 228 will be given to the Sri Lanka Air Force through mutually agreed terms and conditions between both countries.
The region that we collectively inhabit is home to well over 2 billion people, and it's important that all do our part to ensure that life for everyone is safe and secure. In this backdrop, we come together collectively to ensure and enhance an empowered enforcement of regional maritime security in the best interest of all. The aircraft, the Dornier 228, is a perfect fit for the maritime requirements of Sri Lanka, and with its induction into our fleet from today onwards will give us much needed height, reach, thereby enhancing our maritime domain awareness to a greater extent. We intend to use to ensure and enhance regional security with special focus on preventing maritime pollution, human smuggling and other illegal activities.
This gift is a symbol of deep cooperation between our armed forces, our defense personnel, our two countries. Our mutual security, our mutual safety, mutual trust, goodwill and friendship is important for safety, security of each of us, but also for the region. Peace is indivisible and so is security. Mutual goodwill, mutual understanding, mutual trust and cooperation with close and good friends such as India and Sri Lanka enhances not only their individual security but also provides an environment conducive to developing their cooperation for prosperity and well-being.
India today is becoming a world power, and it is still on the rise, and by the mid-century, when we are no longer there, you could see a powerful India playing a dominant role in the global stage. My advice to rising politicians from Sri Lanka, those who aspire for higher office, is get to know your Indian colleagues. Get to know them well and get to deal with them. Because if you do not do that, it will be difficult for you to look at issues and understand what each other says. We have common viewpoints in many. It is essential that we speak to them. After all, India is our closest neighbor. Our relationship is not merely one between two countries. We've gone beyond that. I've always said that we are two sides of a single coin. It is not possible to split a coin for one face to fall one way and the other face to fall the other way. Whatever it is, history has put us together and we have to stay together. So when we are both now marking our 75th anniversary, I would say let us commit ourselves to further strengthening our relationship.
Now, President Ranil Wickremesinghe has ordered public sector officials to strictly adhere to the Treasury circular issued on the 26th of April pertaining to limiting of government expenditure. The directive issued by the President's Secretary Saman Ekanaika on behalf of the President warns that those failing to adhere would be held personally liable. On the 26th of April 2022, Treasury Secretary Mahinda Siriwardana issued a circular bearing number 3 of 2022 instructing government institutions to limit expenditure, taking the current economic crisis into account. The circular includes instructions to limit payments of fuel and communication allowances, reduce expenditure on electricity and water, halt constructions or obtaining buildings on lease, and halt the payments of various types of allowances from a Ministry of Institutional level without a cabinet approval. On the instructions of President Ranil Wickremesinghe, the Secretary to the President Saman Ekanaika issued a directive today to Ministry Secretaries, Department Heads, District Secretaries, Head of State Corporations, Statutory Boards and State-owned enterprises to strictly adhere and act as per Circular number 3 of 2022 issued on the 26th of April. It also warned that those failing to follow the directive would be personally held liable. In the meantime, President's Secretary also advised state institutions that ministry secretaries and heads of state institutions or any employee should refrain from exchanging letters pertaining to judicial matters or matters related where the government or state officials are parties with the Chief Justice, judges of appeal, and judicial courts, and judicial officers including High Court, District and Magistrate judges. The President's Secretary informs that the institutions are only allowed to write to the Attorney General's Department as per the provisions of Chapter 26 of the Establishments Code, which is on the channels of communication. If letters are to be addressed to the Attorney General's Department apart from the said factors, it needs to be done via the Presidential Secretariat. The letter says that the exchange of letters between the Ministry of Justice or any other state institution with Judicial Service Commission, Attorney General's Department and judicial officers pertaining to day-to-day subject matter and complaints to Judicial Service Commission with regard to judicial officers does not fall under this directive. Now, the Samagi Janabalawege parliamentarian Lakshman Kiriyalla is of the view that Sri Lanka will not get any financial assistance from the international community as long as the current government continues in power. Speaking at the party media briefing, he said that President too has no journey with the existing government. Meanwhile, opposition leader Sajith Premadasa once again reiterated his support towards the all-party government, but said that his party will not take up positions in the cabinet.
අපි සූදානම් සර්වපාක්ෂික ඒකාබද්ධ වැඩපිළිවෙලකට අපේ උපරිම සහයෝගය ලබා දෙන්න. ඕන තරම් අවස්ථා තියෙනවා කැබිනට් එකට ඇතුල් වෙන්න. එහෙම කරන්නට අපි යන්නේ නැහැ. ලක්ෂ 220ක් රටේ ජනතාවට හෙණ ගැහුවත් කමක් නැහැ. අපි ගන්නවා අපේ ඇමති පංගුව. ඒ වගේ නැහැදිච්ච දේශපාලන රටාවකට අපි කිසිම දවසක ප්‍රවේශ වෙන්නේ නැහැ, අවතීර්ණ වෙන්නේ නැහැ. කවුරු කොහොම කිව්වත් අලුත් ජනවර්මකට යන්න සිද්ධ වෙනවා.
අපි ඔක්කොමලා එකතු වුණා එක සටන් පාටයකට. ඒ සටන් පාටේ ගොඩක් කොට ගෙදර යවන්න. නමුත් අපි ඔක්කොලාටම එකතු වෙන්න බැරි වුණා. කොට ගියේ පස්සේ මොකද්ද සිද්ධ වෙන්නේ කියන එක. එක එක අතකින් මේ අරගලේ මේ අවධියේ තිබ්බ දුර්වලතාවය. එතකොට මේක තීරණාත්මක විදියට වෙනස් කරන්න නම් ගෝඨ විතරක් ගෙදර යවල බෑ. පාර්ලිමේන්තු සංයුතියත් වෙනස් කරන්න ඕනේ. අන්න එතනට තමයි දැන් අපි මේක හරව ගන්න වෙන්නේ.
අවාසනාවකට මේ අරගලයේ උදවිය මේ IMF එක ගැන ප්‍රශ්නය මතු කළේ නැහැ. ඒ වගේම මේ රාජ්‍ය ව්‍යවසායන් පුද්ගලිකකරණය කරන ඒ යෝජනාව ගැන විරෝධය පළ කරේ නැහැ. ආණ්ඩුවේ ඉන්න වැඩි හරියක් IMF කාර්යෝ. විපක්ෂයේ ඉන්න වැඩි හරියකුත් IMF කාර්යෝ. අපි කියන යෝජනාවලට පරස්පර යෝජනාවල නම් ආණ්ඩුවේ ඉන්න ඒ කියන්නේ IMF එකත් එක්ක යන වැඩපිළිවෙලක නම් රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහට අපට උදව් වෙන්නත් බෑ. අපි නිසා රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහට මේ රටට උදව් වෙන්නත් බෑ.
IMF එකට සාකච්ඡා කරන්න හරි අපිට පෞද්ගලික උදව් කරන වෙන රටකට සාකච්ඡා කරන්න හරි මේ රටේ ස්ථාවර ආණ්ඩුවක් තියෙන්නට ඕනේ. හොරකම් කරන්නේ නැති වංචා කරන්නේ නැති ආණ්ඩුවක් තියෙන්න ඕනේ. දැන් ලෝකෙට මතයක් කියලා තියෙන මේ ආණ්ඩුව හොරකම් කරනවා. ඒක තමයි අපි හැමදාම කිව්වේ සර්වපාක්ෂික ආණ්ඩුවක් හදන්න. එහෙම නැත්නම් සර්වපාක්ෂික පාලනයක් හදන්න. කෑලි කඩා ගන්න නැතුව ඒ පක්ෂ අතර ආණ්ඩුවක් හැදුවොත් මම හිතනවා ආණ්ඩුව ස්ථාවරයි කියන පණිවිඩයත් එක්කම අර නැති වෙච්ච අවිශ්වාසය නැවත විශ්වාසය බවට පෙරලෙනවා.
මම එකක් කියන්නම් නව ජනාධිපතිවරයා අලුත් මේ ව්‍යසනයට එතුමා සම්බන්ධ නැහැ. ආණ්ඩුවත් එක්ක එතුමාට ගමනක් නැහැ. මොකද ජනාධිපතිතුමා එක පුද්ගලයෙක්. ජාත්‍යන්තර බලන්නේ ආණ්ඩුව දිහා. මේ ආණ්ඩුවේ ඉන්නේ රට බංකොලොත් කරපු අය. ඉතින් මේ ආණ්ඩුව ඉන්නකම් ජනාධිපතිතුමාට කොච්චර වුණාවත් තිබ්බත් මේ ආණ්ඩුව ඉන්නකම් ආධාර හම්බ වෙන්නේ නැහැ.
Now, the main opposition, Samagi Janabalawegya, has nominated 2 of its parliamentarians to preside over the Committee of Public Enterprises and the Committee of Public Accounts. Accordingly, the names of MPs Eran Vikramaratne and Kabir Hashim have been proposed to the Speaker of Parliament for the chairmanship of COPE and COPA respectively. Previously, Eran Vikramaratne served as Deputy Minister of Finance during the government of good governance, and Kabir Hashim served as the Minister of Petroleum Resources Development. And stay with us for more news after this short break.
Big 3.
Welcome back. Now, the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation announced today that a shipment of 30,000 metric tons of diesel and super diesel is expected to reach Sri Lanka between tomorrow and the 18th. Meanwhile, with the weekly fuel quota issued under the National Fuel Pass system renewing today, the Ministry of Power said that it will announce any revisions to the quotas this week after analysing the data of fuel issuance from the week before. With effect from midnight yesterday, the fuel quota allocated for the general public per week were reset for this week. The Ministry of Power and Energy stated that based on the fuel issuance data collected last week, the ministry will announce any changes to the fuel quota in the coming days. In the meantime, with today being the 15th of the month, a revision to the fuel prices is expected to be announced by the ministry. This is due to the ministry's announcement previously that it would announce any price revisions on the 1st and the 15th of every month. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Power and Energy announced that a shipment with 120,000 metric tons of crude is expected to arrive in Sri Lanka between the 23rd and the 29th of this month. The Ceylon Petroleum Corporation meanwhile added that a shipment of diesel and super diesel with 30,000 metric tons is expected to arrive between tomorrow and the 18th of this month. The CPC added that the shipment will also bring 10,000 metric tons of aviation fuel to the country. Now, the general public will now once again have to experience power cuts of 3 hours starting from tomorrow. This is because of a breakdown in the first unit of the Norachole power plant that occurred last night. Public Utilities Commission stated that it will take up 14 days to get the first unit of the power plant up and running. 900 megawatts of power is added to the national power grid daily by the Norachole power plant. The power plant operates with the contribution of 3 units. Currently, the second unit, which produces up to 300 megawatts, is undergoing scheduled maintenance work. In this backdrop, a breakdown in Unit 1 of the power plant last night will deprive 270 megawatts of power to the national grid. With this being the case, the Ceylon Electricity Board announced today that they will have to implement 3-hour power cuts in the coming days due to the loss of 270 megawatts of power. However, there was no change in power disruption today. Currently, 58% of the power requirements are being fulfilled through hydropower.
First coal plant of Norachole had a breakdown last night due to minor issue. The issue is that inside the boiler there are certain pipes that has been broken. They need almost 14 days to repair this little breakdown. The main reason why 14 days is needed to repair the coal plant, because this plant is operating at almost 1000 Celsius temperature. This should come down. It will take around almost 7 to 8 days to cool down. Then only the people can go in and do the repairs. So repairs will take around 3 to 4 days. So within 14 days, we should be able to bring back the coal plant into power generation again. During this time, the CB will use oil-powered power plants, namely West Coast, the Baj and Sapukaskan, the generation plant, to produce this lost energy from the coal plant. Thus, we should be able to manage the power cuts under 3 hours until the plant is being repaired and connected back to the national grid.
Now, the chairman of the Public Utilities Commission, Janaka Ratnayaka, said today that the PUCSL did its best to ensure that the increase in electricity tariffs would not be unfair to any sector of the economy. He made these remarks while responding to certain media reports accusing the PUCSL of arbitrarily increasing tariffs. Ratnayaka went on to say that the PUCSL had taken measures to point out to the International Monetary Fund that the Ceylon Electricity Board had covered its costs by generating 500 million rupees instead of the IMF's proposal to allow the CB to gain 850 million rupees.
There are many posts and talks going around in social media and news bulletins that we have arbitrarily increased the power tariff. PCSL do not take the blame, because in 4 proposals, CB wanted the tariff to go up to 230% and up revenue-wise up to around 868 billion. PUCSL did not agree with that. We approved only the second proposal, which CB needs only 500 billion to recover their cost. And if you look at the tariff proposals that they have subsequently submitted to us, now if you look at this low-income families where they use 30, 60 and 90 units, we have priced at 8, 12 and 16 rupees, whereas the CB wanted more than 20 to 25 rupees per unit. And again, we have approved only 120 rupees, 240 rupees and 360 rupees as a monthly fixed charge, where CB wanted almost 1,100, 1,500 and 2,500 rupees as a fixed charge for these low-income categories. We have looked at the low-income families and the industries, hoteliers and every industry, and we have given our rates and we have given the tariff for everyone to be happy or maybe manage with their income. If you think the current 75% tariff increase by CB is too much, remember CB asked for 229% at the public hearing, and CB GM lobbied IMF to force PUCSL to do so. And this is not said by PUCSL. This is the reality that we have been encountering for last maybe couple of weeks and months, because when we met the IMF, the team, they wanted almost 850 billion rupees as income for the CB, which we said that the benefit of power cuts and hydro power and all those things, that the CB can manage the affairs with maybe 500 billion. And I'm quite sure that since the generation cost has come down, now see, last 1 month, we hardly used any oil or fuel for power generation. And we have been using almost 60% from hydro and then balance from coal. Now, since the coal is having an issue, we are using maybe 2-3 plants to generate around 270 megawatts that we lost power from the coal plant in order to manage this deficit. So therefore, we are quite confident that the power plant will come back and we will get enough coal for the next year, and there won't be any problem, and we can manage our power cuts within less than 3 hours for everyone to be happy and manage with their affairs.
Now, in the meantime, Sri Lanka's death toll from COVID-19 climbed to 16,624 after the Director General of Health Services confirmed 9 more COVID-19 related deaths in the country for yesterday. According to the Department of Government Information, 2 of the victims were aged 60 years and above, and the remaining one was aged between 30 to 59 years. Meanwhile, another 129 COVID-19 infections have been identified in the country today, bringing the total number of COVID-19 cases detected in the country thus far to 668,141. In this backdrop, the health authorities once again urge the public to adhere to the safety protocols such as wearing masks and to get vaccinated with the recommended doses. Welcome back. Now in your business news, global ratings agency S&P Global on Monday slashed its ratings on Sri Lankan bonds to D, representing default following missed interest and principal payments. Sri Lanka's external public debt freeze prevents payments of interest and principal obligations due on the government's international sovereign bonds. S&P said it did not expect the Sri Lankan government, which remains on default on some foreign currency obligations, to make the bond payments within 30 calendar days after their due dates. The ratings agency affirmed its SD long-term and SD short-term foreign currency sovereign ratings on Sri Lanka, as well as reiterated the outlook for the island nation at negative. Now the Colombo bourse commenced the week on a positive note and continued to trade in gains for 2.5 weeks straight. The market turnover today was 5.8 billion rupees. The main index shot up by over 200 points within the first few minutes of the trading and moved sideways afterwards, profit-taking on Haley's LIOC and Expo Lanka, which positively contributed to the ASPI hike in recent past. Despite ballooning selling pressure on selected counters, the market managed to close the day at 9,192, gaining 164 points. Capital goods sector and food and beverage and tobacco jointly contributed 46% to the turnover, while LIOC in the energy sector contributed 19%. Despite being bullish, foreign investors continued to remain net sellers for the third day. Now, a court in military-ruled Myanmar convicted the country's ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi on more corruption charges today. International media reported that 6 years to an earlier 11-year prison sentence has been added. The trial was held behind closed doors with no access for the media or the public, and her lawyers were forbidden by a gag order from revealing information about the proceedings. In the 4 corruption cases decided today, Suu Kyi was alleged to have abused her position to rent public land at below market prices and to have built a residence with donations meant for charitable purposes. She received sentences of 3 years for each of the 4 counts, but the sentences for 3 of them will be served concurrently, giving her a total of 6 more years in prison. However, she denied all the charges and her lawyers are expected to appeal. She had already been sentenced to 11 years in prison on sedation, corruption and other charges at early trials after the military ousted her elected government and detained her in February 2021. And that's all the news we have for you this evening. Join us again tomorrow at the same time. Good night.